Fish hooks, that's what I say. For the last 2 or 3 years I've been using barbless hooks more and more and more. For about over 40 years, quite a few local clubs have insisted on barbless hooks on their still waters, and weirdly over the last sort of decade they've actually backed off that. But I do like barbless hooks. There's a time for hooks with a micro barb, but for small hooks up to about a 14 I'd go barbless as much as possible. A little bit of fishing I may use a barbed hook, like chub fishing, where there's weeds and the chub can transfer the hook quite easily into the weeds. I've got some hooks that I use microbarb for grayling, some old Drennan carbon chub hooks. But like I say, what I want to do as much as possible is to use barbless hooks. Baits like maggots hook on much easier. It's easy to unhook the fish, and it's easier to unhook me when I hook into my clothing or anything else. Now, Drennan did a hook for a while, they still do these, called a barbless Silverfish Match, and they are bigger than the size that they say. So this says a 16, but it's bigger than a true 16. And when it comes to a 20, it's not quite an 18. And they are a fine wire hook, fairly wide gape, straight point, not curved in. They're very sharp, perfect. They don't bend too easily. I don't get straightened out on them. Caught hundreds of fish, thousands of fish on these hooks. They do have a flaw, and that is they are prone to losing the point. Like I say, they're very sharp, but when you're using a maggot, you very quickly know if that tiny fraction of a millimetre of the point's gone, because they simply won't go in. And it does seem to vary with the size of hook. The 16s and the 14s, which are the ones I like using for bread punch and bread flake, aren't too bad, but they can still lose the point, and you have to change the hook. I used to have a little diamond hook sharpener called a Lap Easy or something. I don't know, can't find it, lost it. I should have to get another one. But the 20s and the 22s, I do use the 18s a bit. It's not easy to buy these hooks. We've got loads of 16s and 20s and 14s, but not many 18s and 22s. But the 20s and the 22s, you can have the point go after half a dozen fish. And we're only talking roach. We're not talking something with a really hard, bony mouth, like a trout or a perch or something like that. It just goes, and you're nicking on, and you want to really nick on a maggot on a little hook, and you think it doesn't work. Even the old pre-chemically sharpened hooks that go back to the 70s and 80s, the old mustads I use, they didn't lose their points that easily. They weren't as sharp to start with, but they stayed reasonably sharp. In the days I used to use Leon d'Or cannel hooks, I used to use them for speed fishing and pinch the barb in a little size 20 long shank, and you could catch, in a good match, I was getting over 1,000 fish, and I might use 2 hooks because they did get eventually a little bit blunt. That's after 600 fish, 600 or 700 fish. So these are flawed. Now Drennan, I'm going to knock Drennan, they've brought out a new brand called Acolyte hooks. Now these are about $1.95, $1.99 for 10, so they're nearly 20p a hook. And the Acolytes are nearer £3 for a packet of 10, so I don't know if they're $2.65 or whatever, $2.95. So they're a fair bit, 30% or more dearer, and they're said to keep their points better. What they don't have is a pattern like this. So I needed to find an answer. Now, Daiwa promoted Gamakatsu hooks for a few years, and there's 3 patterns that are of interest to me, or 2 patterns really. One is the wide gape maggot, which again, like the Drennan one, is bigger than its true size, and I've got 20s, 16s and 14s, but Daiwa have dropped this, but I was able to get a lot of these hooks very cheaply. So instead of £2.70 for 10 or whatever, very similar price to that Acolyte hooks, I was paying 75 pence a packet. Now that's cheap. Now these hooks really are sharp and they really do hold that point. I haven't tried them very much. I've got loads and loads and loads of these Silverfish Match hooks to use up. And when I've used them up, I'm going to be forced onto these, which again, I'm going to run out of these at one point. So that's the wide gape maggot. And I've also got a few of the size 20 Gamma Black. Now that is a 20 and it's a true 20. So the two 20s next to each other, which I'll try and do a close-up of, there's quite a difference in size. You'd almost say one's a 20, a true 20, and the other's an 18. They're very slightly, the point comes in a tiny bit. They're all these are all barbless, and like I say, they are very, very sharp and they hold it. I've done a 2-hour session on a local pond, just fishing a waggler. Had about 50 fish, nearly all roach, 1 or 2 little skimmers, little hybrids, little perch. And at the end of the session, the hook is as sharp as at the start, and the Drennan hooks aren't doing that. Now, the Acolytes may well be staying that sharp, but that's what I want. It's got to stay that sharp, because I'm just crazy to keep having to put a new hook on because the thing's blunt. And when it's blunt, not only does it not penetrate a maggot to hook it on, you'll start bumping fish because they're just not hooking the fish. It's a difficult one with hooks, in that anyone who's been obsessive about hooks like I have will tell you, oh, you get a pattern, you think this is the pattern, this is the ideal one, this is it, and the manufacturer stops making them or changes it, not for the better, and you can no longer buy them. I've tried a few Preston hooks. Some of them, what they call the natural series, I think it might be an N10, is quite nice as a big hook. A sort of a 12 or a 10 or a 14 with a barb. Some of the tiny barbless ones, they tend to have a point that's curved in and Teflon coated. I'm in 2 minds about Teflon coatings. Theoretically, they hook more easily. In practice, do they unhook more easily when you're playing the fish? In other words, do they fall out more easily? Possibly they do, I don't know. That's it for today. Just a quick video talking about hooks. The rivers are diabolically flooded at the moment. At the moment it starts dropping, it starts raining again. And so, having fallen fast, before you know it, it's on its way up again. And I'm really struggling to get on the river, but I am doing a bit of fishing, and hopefully bring some more bankside action soon. Till next time, it's goodbye for now.